when I say they, I mean the kind of, globalists, ideologues of that particular ilk. It would be a dangerous fracture of that kind of free trade and political bloc. And they talk about the serious consequences and the dangers. A lot of the people here in Dresden have spoken out. For example, Henri de Castries, the chairman of Bilderberg, he talks about the serious consequences of Brexit. A lot of them do. Thomas Enders, the head of Airbus, who's pretty much playing host here, he's talked about lobbying for Brexit, against Brexit for the Remain people, and the Remain campaign has had money from Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan. Goldman Sachs, I've had a conversation myself with a director of Goldman Sachs. He was having a glass of wine last night, and I went up and said hello. I said, would you mind having a press conference? That would be nice. And he said he'd pass it on. So whether or not he will, I hope he does.
Well, let's remember, Charlie Skelton, again, of the London Guardian, that just 5, 6, 7 years ago, some mainstream media was saying Bilderberg didn't exist. So this is a huge victory for independent real press that now at least they admit it exists, and that to a great extent it is as important as Davos. It's just basically a private Davos that predates Davos. I mean, that's how I put it.
Absolutely. And I think if you look at the press, you can see there's a definite change. Year by year, you get more pieces in the mainstream press that treat it seriously, more pieces that do an analysis of the list, the participant list, that look at it as a kind of political, commercial, private summit, that critique it in terms of transparency and lobbying, and that the language, I think, is changing, and it's veering away from a kind of easy description of it as a conspiracy theory or something which you still get, but you get less of, and more simply journalists treating it for what it is, which is an extremely high-powered, commercially paid-for globalist summit. So, yes, I think there's a change from the point of view of the media for the good. And in terms of Bilderberg itself, I think it's fascinating to see how over the last few years they have shifted towards Silicon Valley and towards new technology. The people that you see on their board of on the steering committee are people like Eric Schmidt from Google and Peter Thiel, who's on the board of Facebook. And they've just brought in Alex Karp, who runs Palantir, which is chaired by Peter Thiel, which is the big kind of data mining and data analysis company, which was set up with CIA money. And in fact, they're bringing in Google DeepMind people, like Dennis Hassabis, who runs Google DeepMind, and they've got someone who's the co-chairman of OpenAI. So artificial intelligence and data mining and data analysis and big data, that's been a theme for the last few years. So what you can see is that Bilderberg is not really this old fuddy-duddy group of people.
They're passing the baton on to the technocrats,
yeah, exactly,
and I'm glad you raised this. Because you talk about they want to be in the future, but they're obsessed with the past with one of your headlines earlier this week. So let's talk about that. They admit they want a technocracy. They call themselves technocrats, unelected. They're going to decide. They're going to feed us what data they want. They're going to control the future. These are all statements. They're handing the baton to the Zuckerbergs and the Schmidts of the world who are there. So we really see the old guard, like the Skeksis, collapsing into dust, handing the scepters. I mean, is that an accurate way to basically boil this down?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they, some of them fade away, but, Kissinger is still here. He's 93. I just saw him arrive. So if you look at some of the older guard, people like Jacob Wallenberg, they run huge industrial conglomerates. And they're still extremely powerful. A lot of these are families, like the Wallenberg family.
Oh, of course they're powerful. I'm just saying they're betting everything on technocracy and kind of handing the control over to the technocrats.
They're definitely betting on technology and technocracy. I mean, without a doubt. Because apart from anything else, they're not idiots. They're smart people and they want to be smart. But, because being smart for them means keeping, I would say in control is perhaps...
Sure. Why do you think they wanted to keep it secret for over 50 years? And what do you think they think of failing now?
It's an odd one, isn't it? I think they've pushed the media away for so long that the mainstream media got out of the habit of speaking about Bilderberg. They sort of forgot that it existed. Then became a little bit of an embarrassment almost, because And it is an embarrassment. To be quite honest, it is embarrassing that the mainstream media still, to a large degree, don't turn up. But, they're still writing about it. And I tell you what's a really good sign is that the agencies are here. So we've got Getty Images and we've got Reuters, who are here taking photographs and feeding them into the kind of press pool of stuff that floats around. So at least the newspapers that can't quite be bothered to come here can at least take the photographs and then write around it. So, it's all, I would say it's changing for the good. And, the more everyone like you and Luke Rudkowski and Dan Dix and everyone who comes and talks about it, everyone that keeps the subject ticking over and in the public consciousness and in the media consciousness, all of that is hugely important because, absolutely, they clearly don't like publicity. And in fact, what's interesting is that this hotel that's at this year has got 2 entrances, and all of the politicians, with I think about one exception, have come in the blocked out limos, and they've been swept into the back door, down into the underground garage with no chance of being photographed. And, it's been the industrialists and the financiers that have come in the front door because they kind of don't care. So, in an age where politicians talk so easily about transparency, it's kind of pathetic.
That's right.
Very senior politicians are hiding like this.
And I think what you hit on, Mr. Skelton, again, the London Guardian, is so key. Charlie Skelton joining us, theguardian.com, is that politicians have always denied this even existed, or that Tony Blair or Bill Clinton got vetted there, or Hillary got vetted there, or Obama got vetted there. I mean, I was there. I saw the Secret Service drive in. They aimed MP5 Heckler, machine guns at me. I got it on tape, and they still said, didn't happen, New York Times. It's just such a collapse of the facade. But you point out the political class, looking at the list, they always try to stay off the list. But more and more, as you pointed out, this year, it appears to be almost purely political. Normally, it's all about big business deals, or there's about to be a new war, a bunch of generals, or some of the Saudis are there. Now the Chinese are hardly ever there, showing they've been kind of kicked out of things. So you can really see this is so political. What do you think's behind that from your sources or just your resource? I mean, is it trying to keep Britain in the euro? Is it because of Europe and so much trouble with the migrant thing? I mean, what do you think makes this so political this year instead of just managing, the next political move? It seems, what does it signify to have so many politicians there?
Well, I think it signifies to me that the power base of Bilderberg, which is broadly speaking one of transnational banks and oil companies and industrial conglomerates, so Shell Oil, BP, Goldman Sachs, HSBC, these giant financial entities clearly want to keep their consensus going. They want to keep their worldview in play. So
that means that they got a lot of politicians there. They may be having trouble keeping everybody in line. Or maybe they're trying to make sure they follow the plan exactly, or what is it?
I mean, at one level, who knows? Because, we don't get to, the politicians that come don't generally report back on it. And, for example, our Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, goes regularly. He's not here this year, but he does regularly go. And he reports back in his transparency data, and I use the phrase advisedly, with the phrase general discussion. That's all he admits happened at Bilderberg, general discussion. It's a bit like when you look at their list of topics and they have current events. That isn't telling us anything, and it's kind of a slap in the face for anyone that values.
Sure. Remember Watford 4 years ago? They were denying the Prime Minister was going, or was it 3? And then here he comes, riding straight in.
Yeah. Well, Tony Blair lied to Parliament about going, and then was caught on camera by Luke Rudkowski, actually, who put him on the spot. And he went, "Oh yes, actually, it was a very useful meeting. Yes, I was there in 1993." That's years after having lied to Parliament about going. I mean, I'm hoping, I live in hope, that the more attention, the more chipping away we do at this story, the more we can hold it in the kind of media and public consciousness, so that politicians will just be more inclined to behave like adults and behave like, representative democracy, representatives.
Exactly, and transparency is going to make them act better. That's why they don't want transparency.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's it. Transparency puts them on the spot and it holds them to account. The last thing a politician wants is to be held to account.
Charlie Skelton's our guest at theguardian.com. We got one more short segment with him, and the 4th hour starts with Anthony Gucciardi coming in. When we come back, I want to just let you talk about whatever you think is most important instead of me asking questions, but also get into what else do you think is on the agenda that's not on this list? What does this list that they put out tell you about what's coming up? Charlie Skelton with the London Guardian, one of the first, if not the first, big international publications to even admit Bilderberg existed. Okay? And again, a lot of that is so much because Drudge, about a decade ago, began to link to our articles at Infowars.com. This isn't about credit here, but it's about realizing the evolution of awakening and that we're winning. We're going to shift gears to domestic politics, the economy, and more with Anthony Gucciardi in the next hour. I'm going to ride shotgun into the next hour with him, and Anthony will also be opening the phones up. Charlie Skelton's our guest. Okay, Charlie Skelton of The Guardian over in Dresden, Germany, covering what's happening. I think we agree, unprecedented coverage, unprecedented admissions that big decisions are being made there. What else is on your radar screen right now?
Well, I would say that it's a statement made by the chairman of Bilderberg, Henri de Castries, he's the guy tipped to be the new head of HSBC, one of the world's largest banks. He said recently, he was asked recently at an interview, does privacy exist? No. He was asked, is privacy dead? That's right. He was asked, is privacy dead? And he looked at the guy and he went, yes. And what's very interesting is that I'm talking about some of the elites here at Bilderberg, treat privacy as something which has kind of, for most of us, evaporated. And yet, for them, we only have to look out the window and see the rows and rows of police vans and the concrete walls. Privacy is absolutely alive and well and thriving at Bilderberg. But for us, they have people like Alex Karp, as I said, from Palantir, whose job is one of the world's largest private companies. Their software is designed to crunch our data that we're freely just spouting out in every which way.
And create algorithms.
Exactly. So you've got a board member of Facebook here, Peter Thiel. It's all about, and obviously Eric Schmidt from Google. So
that's a great point. Schmidt makes his girlfriends wear hoods over their heads. Zuckerberg's buying up his whole neighborhood so nobody can look at him. They're obsessed with secrecy and have the police harassing the press, and then they're all spying on us. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, but worse than spying on us, they think it's dead. They think that the argument is over. They think, when I say if I'm quoting the chairman of Bilderberg, I think it's fair enough to say he thinks at least that privacy is dead. It's over. So we're living in a post-privacy world. And this is
so they're killing our privacy, using our data against it, and then giving themselves like royalty exemption from it.
Absolutely, and it's a very technocratic structure if you think about it. It's a sort of, it's like Soviet Russia. There's the elite, or East Germany. It's the elite who know everything, and the rest of us who get spied on. And the difference is, in West Germany, a guy had to sit there listening at the keyhole or whatever, and here we're just throwing open our lives to data crunching companies.
Sure,
like
and I know on German TV, because I follow it some, they have all these shows about the Stasi and how bad it was, and then they admit it's like hundreds of times worse now, and it's like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely, it's an argument I think that needs to be reignited.
No, you know what, man, you always have the best arguments. I mean, you're absolutely right. They're total hypocrites.
Totally, and it's kind of annoying that we talk about transparency. Politicians are meant to be transparent, and yet structures political structures like Bilderberg carry on as totally happily as ever, and just as powerful, if not more, than ever. So, sure. Yeah, it's a kind of a slightly.
And they use all their inside data. They admit to game the markets, to rig the stock markets, the currency. They admit just everything's rigged. They take all our data, they screw us over, and then our taxes pay to have paramilitary police harass the press.
Yeah, absolutely. And they will engage in things like LIBOR fraud and a lot of banking fraud. And the guy there's people here who've been implicated in these things. So yeah, there's definitely a kind of one rule for one, lots of rules for the rest of us.
I'm glad you're there, Charlie Skelton, covering, and hopefully before you leave or on Monday in the aftermath or so, we can have you pop back in. Folks can go to The Guardian, just type in Charlie Skelton or Bilderberg. You'll find his reportage. Are there other good ways to follow you on Twitter, Facebook, or how?
Yeah, I'm tweeting from Deuc, D-E-Y-O-O-K, Deuc. That's on Twitter. But also, there's quite a lot of information on bilderbergmeetings.co.uk. So a lot of background stuff there for people that are interested in.
All right, Charlie, be safe, and we'll talk to you very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you. We'll be back in the fourth hour. A lot of stations cover it, some don't. Infowars.com/show. I'll be co-hosting with Anthony. We're getting back into what's happening locally when we return. Why do I have bumper music I love so much? Because I have to start talking about it every time it comes in. That's all part of the celebration of humanity. Hey, when Willie Nelson goes, he's like 83 now. I got to know him back when he was like 74, 75, 76, 70.